The airport was a blur of hurried footsteps and rolling suitcases, the air thick with the hum of announcements and the faint scent of coffee from a nearby kiosk. At gate 17, a little girl stood alone, her small hands clutching a tattered teddy bear, its fur worn thin from years of love. Her name was Lily, and her big brown eyes, wide with fear, darted across the crowded terminal. She was 9 years old, dressed in a faded pink coat that was a size too big, her sneakers scuffed and untied. Her lips trembled as she scanned the faces of strangers, each one rushing past without a glance. Her small shoulders slumped, and a single tear traced a path down her cheek, glistening under the harsh fluorescent lights. She whispered to her bear, "It's okay, Mr. Paws. We'll find someone. We have to." Her voice cracked, barely audible over the din, but the weight of her words hung heavy. Lily was running out of time. Her mother, Sarah, was supposed to be here. They were meant to catch a flight to Chicago, where Sarah had a job interview, a chance to start over after years of scraping by in their small Ohio town. But Sarah was late, stuck in traffic after a car accident on the icy freeway, and her phone had died an hour ago. Lily had been waiting at the gate for nearly 2 hours, her backpack heavy with a water bottle, a granola bar, and a crumpled note from her mom. "Stay by the gate, sweetheart. I'll be there soon." But soon felt like forever to a 9-year-old alone in a sea of strangers. The gate agent, a kind but busy woman, had checked on Lily twice, but her shift was ending, and the flight was boarding in 30 minutes. Lily's heart pounded. She didn't want to miss the plane. She didn't want to let her mom down. She needed someone to help her. Across the terminal, Daniel Harper sat slouched in a hard plastic chair, sipping lukewarm coffee from a paper cup. At 62, he looked like the kind of man you'd pass without a second thought, gray hair thinning at the crown, a worn flannel shirt tucked into khakis, and a leather jacket slung over his arm. His eyes, though, carried a quiet weight, a mix of weariness and warmth, like he'd seen too much, but still held on to hope. Daniel was heading to Chicago to visit his daughter, Emily, for Thanksgiving. It had been 3 years since they'd spoken, a rift born of stubborn pride and unspoken apologies. He was nervous, his fingers tapping the armrest, when he noticed Lily. She stood out like a single star in a stormy skysmall, fragile, alone. His gaze softened, and he leaned forward, watching as she hugged her bear tighter, her lips moving in a silent plea. Lily's eyes met his, and for a moment, she froze. Then, with a shaky breath, she walked toward him, her sneakers squeaking on the polished floor. She stopped a few feet away, clutching Mr. Paws so tightly her knuckles turned white. "Mister!" Her voice was small, trembling, like a leaf caught in the wind. Can you help me, please?" Daniel set his coffee down, his brow furrowing with concern. "What's wrong, kiddo?" he asked, his voice low and gentle, the kind of tone you'd use to calm a frightened animal. Lily bit her lip, glancing around as if the answer might be hiding in the crowd. "My mom's not here yet, and I need to get on the plane. They won't let me without an adult. Can you pretend to be my daddy? Just for one day? Just to get me on the plane?" Her words tumbled out, desperate, and her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. Daniel's heart clenched. He looked into her eyes, seeing a fear he recognized, the kind that came from feeling utterly alone. He thought of Emily at that age, her pigtails bouncing as she ran to him for help with a scraped knee or a broken toy. He swallowed hard, pushing the memory aside. "What's your name, sweetheart?" he asked, leaning down to her level. "Lily," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "And my mom's coming, I promise. She's just late." Daniel nodded slowly, his mind racing. He didn't know this girl, didn't know her story, but something in her trembling hands and pleading eyes told him she wasn't lying. "Okay, Lily," he said softly, offering a hesitant smile. "Let's figure this out together." He stood and walked her to the gate agent's desk, his hand hovering near her shoulder, careful not to touch, to not scare her. The agent, a woman with tired eyes and a name tag reading Marla, looked up from her computer. "She's with me," Daniel said, his voice steady but warm, like he was stating a fact he'd known all his life. I'm her guardian for the flight. Marla raised an eyebrow, glancing at Lily, who nodded quickly, clutching Daniel's sleeve like a lifeline. Please, Lily added, her voice small but firm. I need to get to Chicago. For my mom. Marla hesitated, then sighed, her face softening. All right, sir. I'll need your ID and boarding pass. Daniel handed them over, his heart thudding. He wasn't sure why he was doing this, but he couldn't walk away not from those eyes, not from that fear. As they waited to board, Daniel sat with Lily on a bench near the gate, the hum of the airport fading into the background. So Lily, he said, his tone light, like they were old friends. What's in Chicago? Something special? Lily hugged Mr. Presenet, paused closer, her fingers tracing his worn ears. My mom's got a job interview, she said quietly. It's a big one. If she gets it, we can move there and maybe things will be better. Her voice wavered and she looked down, her sneakers swinging above the floor. Things haven't been so good lately. Daniel nodded, his throat tight. He knew that kind of hope. The fragile, desperate kind that kept you going when nothing else did. Sounds like your mom's working hard for you, he said, his voice soft. That's something special. Lily gave a tiny nod, a shy smile tugging at her lips. Yeah, she is. They talked as the boarding call echoed through the terminal, Lily's small voice growing steadier with each word. She told him about her mom's late-night shifts at the diner, about the time they made a snowman in their tiny backyard, about how Mr. Paws had been her dad's before he left when she was 4. Daniel listened, his heart aching with every word. He shared a little too about his daughter Emily, who loved to draw when she was Lily's age, about the pumpkin pie he was hoping to share with her this Thanksgiving. Do you think she'll like it? Lily asked, her eyes wide with curiosity. Daniel chuckled, a warm, rumbling sound. I hope so, kiddo, I really do. For the first time, Lily's smile was real, small but bright, like a candle flickering to life. On the plane, they sat side by side, Lily by the window, Daniel in the aisle. She pressed her face to the glass, watching the clouds with a quiet awe. It's like a big cotton candy sky, she whispered, and Daniel laughed, the sound easing the tension in his chest. He handed her a granola bar from his bag, and she took it with a shy, thank you, her fingers brushing his. As the plane hummed through the sky, they shared small, simple ones, like the time Lily won a spelling bee, or how Daniel once burned a batch of cookies so badly his smoke alarm went off. Their laughter was soft, hesitant at first, but it grew, weaving a fragile thread between them. Lily's hand rested on Mr. Pause, and Daniel noticed the way her shoulders relaxed, the fear in her eyes fading, if only a little. When they landed in Chicago, the terminal was a maze of noise and motion, but Daniel stayed close, his presence steady like an anchor in a storm. Lily clutched his hand now, her small fingers cold but trusting. They made their way to the arrivals area, where Sarah was supposed to meet them. But as the minutes ticked by, Lily's grip tightened, her eyes scanning the crowd with growing panic. She'll be here, Daniel said, his voice calm but firm, kneeling to meet her gaze. She's coming for you, Lily, I know it. He didn't know Sarah, didn't know her story, but he believed it because he had to, because Lily needed him to. Then, a woman burst through the crowd, her coat askew, her hair a mess of curls. Lily! She cried, her voice breaking as she ran toward them. Lily's face lit up, and she let go of Daniel's hand, sprinting into her mother's arms. Mommy! She sobbed, burying her face in Sarah's shoulder. Sarah held her tight, tears streaming down her face as she whispered, I'm so sorry, baby. I'm here now. Daniel stood back, his hands in his pockets, a quiet smile on his lips. Sarah looked up, her eyes red but grateful. Are you? She started, her voice trembling. Daniel? He said simply, nodding. I just kept her company. Sarah's gaze softened, and she mouthed the silent, thank you, her hand resting on Lily's head. Sarah explained in a rusher car had broken down after the accident, her phone dead, the tow truck delayed. She'd been terrified, thinking she'd lost her chance at the job, at a new life, at keeping Lily safe. But you got her here, she said to Daniel, her voice thick with emotion. You didn't have to, but you did. Daniel shrugged, his eyes crinkling. She's a good kid, he said softly. Reminds me of someone I know. He thought of Emily, of the call he'd make tonight, the apology he'd been too stubborn to say for years. Lily tugged at his sleeve, holding out Mr. Paws. He says thank you too, she whispered, her smile shy but bright. Daniel chuckled, ruffling her hair gently. Tell Mr. Paws he's welcome. As Sarah and Lily walked away, hand in hand, Daniel watched them go, a warmth spreading through his chest. He thought of the years he'd spent alone, the walls he'd built, the chances he'd missed to be kind, to be present. Today, for one small moment, he'd been someone's anchor, someone's safe place. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough to start again. He pulled out his phone, his thumb hovering over Emily's number. Here goes, he murmured, and pressed call. In the quiet of the Chicago airport, as snow began to fall outside, Daniel felt something shift, a spark of hope, a reminder that kindness, even the smallest act, could change everything. A stranger's plea, a moment of trust, a hand extended when it was needed most. It was enough to mend a heart, to bridge a gap, to light the way forward. And as the line rang, he smiled, knowing he'd carry this moment with him, a small, perfect memory of a little girl and her bear. What's the kindest thing you've experienced? Share in the comments below, and let's spread a little light together. Disclaimer. This story is a fictional or dramatized narrative created for emotional inspiration and entertainment. While it reflects real human emotions, all characters, names, and events are fictional or modified for storytelling purposes. Some parts may use AI-generated voiceovers or scripts. This content fully complies with YouTube's community guidelines and monetization policies. Our goal is to inspire, not to mislead.